Welcome back to episode 28 of the Burning the Red Shirt podcast. I am your host, Zach Tao, and with me, Chris K and Andrew Katz to talk what we saw in week one, look ahead to week two, and everything in between. So how you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. A little delay, little user, got to get some stuff downloaded.
Yeah.
But we're here. We made it.
Driver issues, but whatever. It's done. Andrew.
I'm chilling, man.
Yeah.
No, I'm good, pretty good. It feels like we jumped ahead in the week because of the holiday on Monday, but at the same time, we don't get CFB until Friday, so now it feels like we came out kind of even relative to like the Thursday night game, which we're not
getting the Tuesday Mactions yet. So
yeah,
was that week 6, week 7? When does that start?
It's November,
so
it's like
week 8, week 9,
yeah, 8 maybe.
Week 10.
It's so week 10. Is that long?
First week in November is when me and my buddies are targeting our yearly trip. So I'm very cognizant of the calendar this year.
It's like a holiday for Andrew.
Exactly.
Last week was so crazy that this is nice. Like this is a nice we get a ton of games still. We still get like a 2-gamer on Friday, which is fun. Mm-hmm. And we're not just going crazy nonstop.
Define fun. Define fun, because if it's the game I'm looking at, it's not going to be fun.
Well, you're a Boise fan and you have a million things going on. So
God,
it's probably not the most fun Friday slate. There's got to be some others out there, but I think the first game is fun. UCF and Louisville, that's about as good as it gets for a weekday game.
Oh, incredible!
Right?
Yeah. It's gonna be amazing.
As long as Louisville doesn't put up a stinker like they did last week.
Yeah, they can't do it again. It's like God said, you know what? I'm giving you UCF Louisville, so you must have to deal with New Mexico Boise State.
It's about right. I don't even want to get into that. But what I do want to get into is what you guys thought from week one was the thing that stood out to you, the game that stood out, surprised you, or didn't live up to a hype or whatever. Andrew, I want you to go first.
I'm so cognizant of when I allow myself to truly rip off the mask and just become an awful human being on any given Saturday. I generally try and stay away from the TV during the day, and just obviously I don't have the amount of restraint where I can't be checking scores and internally twisting my stomach into knots. I'm not that kind of I don't have that level of control, but I don't really allow myself to let loose until night slate usually, and held true this week. I caught a little bit of the early games, which is rare for me. I usually won't watch anything on Saturday during the day, but really just waited until kids went to bed, and then just absolutely started funneling drinks and just getting where I need to be for the night games. And I forget what I was watching initially, but I was flipping back and forth. I think I had some Ohio State Notre Dame on, but I love taking advantage of ESPN Plus just because it truly is not a spectacular viewing experience. You're usually talking about some fuzzy video. The things that are on the screen in terms of the caption, you're really fortunate if you get down a distance. You're usually not getting anything like that. You're lucky if you get a score, and the announcing crews tier 4, more or less. So I targeted the Texas Tech game and watched that for a while. And it was so obvious when something happened to Shuck too. I watched the play happen, and dude, they leave him in for another series and change, and he immediately misses a screen by 5 feet over a guy's head, and then misses a wide open receiver 30 yards down the field in the end zone. No one's even near the guy. It's but initially you just chalk it up to it's just Shuck being Shuck, the guy that we assume would lose his job anyway. But he was sharp before that, firing past solver plays. You think that. Watching the guy who ripped his collarbone to pieces last year get tackled on his neck would have triggered some sort of connection in my head, but it did not. I was already a couple of drinks deep at that point. And then kind of it all came to pass. Smith comes in, and of course the TV crew doesn't even think to mention that something might be going on. They're like, oh, they're just giving Smith a series or two or whatever. But of course, Like it's got to be a collarbone. They're like trying to play around that. Could be just like AC joint or whatever. And no, like we're not seeing him again, I don't think. But anyway, so after that kind of bummed me out for a little bit. But I had moved all of on the score. I'd highlighted with the bell thing where you can bring the games to the top of your your scrolling experience on the score app. I'd moved all the games to the top that I had win totals on for the year, win total bets. And Southern Miss Liberty was one of them. So I was like, oh, that game is like making moves. Like, let's see what's going on there. And I missed the initial quarter or so, and I kind of caught up just through like checking doing some box score scouting. And I saw Ty Keys, like all that offseason hype apparently was just like, I have a lot of faith in Will Hall, generally speaking. I drank a lot of the Kool-Aid, but the dude Ty Keys was 4 of 8 with 2 interceptions, and I think he might have lost the fumble as well. So it's like, okay, I guess you're still a turnover machine. And I assumed that the reason that when I flip back onto that game, that the reason that we're seeing Frank Gore launching passes all over the field was just because they were like, you know what, this is like the Keys experiment. We're moving on from that. It's time to go to our real quarterback. But apparently Keys ended up getting hurt in the game. But I watched more or less the remainder of that game kind of on and off, flipping back and forth across other things. And as I progressed and kind of kept progressing through my night and my drinking environment, stuff like that, I had so many impressions that on that game, and I feel like I can only recall so many of them with the appropriate amount of detail and context. But I mean, that game looked like it was looking so good for our boys, hashtag SMTTT, for so long. Like some of the Frank Gore passes were like it's this 5'8" dude just actually looking like a real quarterback. Like he was laying out some dimes to guys, like rolling to his left. And he only completed like one pass, I think, but
1 for 4.
Yeah, but dude,
for like 48 yards.
Pass 40 yards down the field, drops it right into the dude's arms, and of course he drops it. But that the game was looking so good for them until, and I mentioned that Ty Keys is out, but of course now we know like Charlie Brewer is out like 6 to 8 weeks as well. And one of the reasons that this game was looking so good for Southern Miss is because they bring in Jonathan Bennett, and that dude is dust. Like he is just such a backup quarterback. Like he can he can get the snap off, probably execute on the play that the coach wants to, and as long as it's like simple enough, like he's not going to make any mistakes. But that dude was not winning the game, and it kind of reminded me. And here I go comparing Southern Miss Liberty to Alabama, Georgia from 2018 or whatever it was, but it kind of reminded me of that, where like as long as Jonathan Bennett was in the game, as long as Jalen Hurts was in the game, I knew my guys were going to win that game. And then Freeze, I guess at a certain point, he's like, well, F it. Like this dude's not winning the game. Let's put in Kaidon Salter. And you watch a couple plays of just Salter playing quarterback, and you're like, we're fucked. Like, like this is
not the experience we were expecting.
Yeah. I was like, oh, third string QB. Like this dude's obviously third string for a reason. Like, yeah, he had the hype, the pedigree, but it's just like I expected. Like, all right, maybe he's just like an elite athlete and it doesn't translate to the quarterback, but it's not that at all. And I was thinking about like what the comp I would make is, and it's almost watching him play reminds me a lot of Khalil Tate when he first got into games. Except like Salter has a ridiculous arm, and he not just like an arm and like where he can throw it far, like he can put the ball exactly where he wants it to. But you can also tell why he's third string. And I think it's pretty obvious. Like whenever the play starts, that is actually like the start of the play. And what happens after that could be anything. So you can imagine in practice where Freeze wants him to like execute a drill or something, or just execute a play in line with like, okay, we're going to run this play. This is what's going to happen. That's probably never happens actually, because Kaidon Salter just wants to freestyle and figure shit out on the fly, which I respect. Like how many people can actually be that dynamic in
like a little Johnny football.
Yeah. Like it's absolutely special, but there's no way you can actually, I think, in an environment that is not live practice, you can actually see that play out on the practice field. I don't think you can, his strengths, his talents don't resonate in a controlled environment.
Yeah. So
is the whole red shirt thing, where it's like, you can't sack him. So like his whole like juke move, circle, spin move type
Yeah.
thing doesn't actually.
They didn't even
translate
put him in
practice.
until the fourth quarter, and he ended up with not like 9 of 14 for
Like 200 plus yards in total.
9 carries, 65 yards, couple passing TDs, rushing TD. I mean,
Dude,
the game was
great.
just absolutely out of control. Like, I was enjoying it so much until I was rudely reminded that after the second OT, they started the stupid fucking 2-point conversion thing. What a fucking letdown. Like, this game was legendary. Not that I remember most of it, but like just so much ridiculous, dumb shit happening. And like, I added Salter everywhere I could. I can't believe he was available in our Dynasty League. I can't believe someone cut him. But in Dynasty, like I was like, I'll pay whatever it takes. And then I was reading,
And he did. He paid whatever it took.
yeah, I was reading waiver wire content and from people that produce such things, and everyone kind of had him highlighted, but no one had him on like the same tier I did. Well, so initially I had like 90% bids in across the board. I was like, I can probably scale this back to like half, and I'm gonna get him, and I got him everywhere. But I think within 2 weeks, either he's gonna be back on the bench, but not likely because Brewer's out, and like
he's out for like
he's
8
gonna have
weeks,
to go
right?
really badly. But
Yeah.
I don't think I'm starting him this week against UAB just because I kind of respect them as a team. But then next week, I think
You need some time to see that he's for real, unless
Right.
your team is that thin.
So Chris, which game did you have your eye on?
I didn't. So unfortunately,
I was only like halfway done.
I know. I had to jump in here. I had an opportunity.
A good host. I was unfortunately / fortunately at the beach, so I didn't get to watch a ton of stuff. I thought the Texas Tech, like looking back at Texas Tech in terms of like stats and snaps and all that stuff, is super interesting. You see, like, I'm gonna completely butcher this guy's name, and with good reason, like Loic Fungi.
Yes.
He played like 12 total snaps, and he had like 5 catches for 2 touchdowns and like 100 plus yards. Like that's the stuff I look at as like someone that creates projections is like an easy opportunity to play the numbers and just not expect that same type of thing happen. So like I think we've saw the instant overreaction of Miles Price, and I think people will still like Miles Price this weekend, especially against Houston, who just gave up some good performances against UTSA. But like, I think like this is furthermore pushes that I want Bradley, I want Price, and I'm really happy about that. Playing him in DFS, and I have Bradley a bunch in Dynasty. But the Frank Gore stuff was hilarious. Like looking into that, like the whole weekend, I was like, I don't know why you guys are freaking out about Southern Miss. Like whatever. Like I don't like everybody was like just ragging Southern Miss in terms of like what did they do? How did this happen? And then I look it up, and I'm reading like this article about it like literally 3 hours ago, and it was Keys gets hurt, Lowe comes in, throws an interception on a deep ball. They go into halftime. Frank Gore's QB1, and Will Hall calls it the super back. He's like, well, the super back scored on the first drive, so we said screw it. And then I saw like a tweet that was like, did Frank Gore really just throw a fade route at the goal line? Like it was just incredible. So that was awesome. Today or on Saturday, I was able to watch / listen to a little bit in the car. JJ McCarthy officially won the Michigan job, which was awesome.
Really?
No, but it's happening.
Yeah.
Dude was 4 for 4 passing, and he had a long touch, like a nice 35-yard touchdown run. I mean,
so what
this
I found
is exactly what Harbaugh wanted. He wanted He wanted to pick McCarthy. He knew that he could not go against at least week 1. This kind of feels Ian Bookish from Notre Dame years ago, where it's like I can't like really justify picking like the sophomore that doesn't have a lot of experience, that kind of made a huge mistake against Michigan State last year that almost cost him the win, but not necessarily in a sense. But so McNamara comes out, looks very average. He throws for like $180 and 61 yards. It was on the first drive on a screen pass. That's nothing. And then McCarthy looks great in limited action. McCarthy is going to go for 400 rushing yards and 300 passing yards against Hawaii. and it's going to be game over, and they're going to go to the playoff, and they're going to win a championship.
Do you think McNamara gets time in that game or no?
I think he gets time because I think that's the way to justify like a full competition, right? It's like, well, McCarthy played, we're up 51-0 at this point. Well, I'm sorry, 42-0 at this point, and then we'll let McNamara get a couple drives because we did that with McCarthy, and then we're gonna let an orgy happen in the fourth quarter. So,
oh boy,
did y'all see that, by the way?
I did. RG3 was, of course, super weird about it.
I mean, not. I don't know. I don't know why I would feel not surprised by that, but I feel like he's the type of guy to use words and puns like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great.
So I guess the game that I watched, it was a little. I wanted to see James Madison. I know they were playing Middle Tennessee, but I wanted to see if Chris Thornton was the real deal. And what I meant by the real deal is, like, is he going to be a fantasy relevant player, or is he just their wide receiver one that's just going to get, 80 yards a game? Like, no, they were targeting him. It seemed like every other play. Every time they threw the ball, it felt like it was him or what was the other guy? There was two guys. Yeah, and like they
Brown or something like that.
Yeah, and I don't think I heard another receiver's name the whole like half that I watched. And it was great to see if you have Chris Thornton. But I also learned, I have to say it since you brought it up pre-show, Chris, the pronunciation of the running back. I don't know if it's legit or not, but they kept saying it this way. Percy Ajay Obase.
That feels right. You did the phonetics behind it, like in the messaging to us, and I was like, I don't know what you're saying right now. Like that, like I know what you're trying to do, but like I can't actually say that.
So like that's what they kept saying on the broadcasts, and I'm like, you know what? That's probably right, but it's better than saying.
How did he look, by the way? Is he viable? Is he like a decent?
I mean, he was their
last flex guy.
He was their running back. That's about all I can say. Like, I mean, Middle Tennessee's pretty bad, and it just felt like their clear advantage was just throwing the ball all game. I mean, he looked okay.
Mateo throw the ball like that dude sucked on Temple and he sucked on Colorado State.
Man, he was throwing dimes, man. And maybe it was Middle Tennessee, but like, I guess
did he actually did his throwing mechanics look actually decent? Because I don't remember comfortable ever being decent.
He looked comfortable back there throwing the ball. So that's all I can say. Middle Tennessee, I think, is bad. I think they're bottom 10 bad.
Dude, I will say one of my two favorite things of the weekend in terms of fantasy leagues, Andrew winning by like 0.3 in the 50-teamer. Over Sleepy Joe. Poor guy. I think you guys put up like what 148 each, basically.
Yeah, 150.
And poor Joe just lost by like 0.3.
Dude, I stayed up as late as I could, and I went to bed. And he strategically had the Hawaii tight end, and he needed like 5 points. And I'm like, I can't. I'm like, I'm so messed up. I need to go to sleep.
It was midnight. Like, I don't blame you.
Yeah. So I wake up, and of course I do the degenerate thing where I I go to the play-by-play and I scroll through and I'm looking for Jordan Murray catches instead of checking the actual score of our fantasy matchup. And none in the first quarter, one in the second. I'm like, oh, full PPR. So I probably got like 2 to 3. But 3's going to be close. And he gets one in the second, the third, and I think the fourth quarter. And I'm adding it up. I'm like, but those last 2, they weren't for a lot of yards. I might be good. So, and then I go over to the box score. I'm like, wow, I won by like literally like 1.05 points.
So show of hands, does anybody else wake up at 5, because we've been drinking all night, or, we've been drinking a little bit, but then we like chug water to make sure we feel good on Sunday. And then ultimately we wake up at 4:30 in the morning. Does anybody else go to the bathroom and literally spend 20 minutes checking all their teams at 4:30 in the morning? Or
so I've been trying to leave my phone in the living room, but usually that helps me get to sleep a little quicker. But then I end up flying out to the living room to like check shit in the middle of the night.
Wait. You put your phone out in the living room?
I've been trying to do it more because I've never been the greatest at falling asleep. Like some people can just turn off the switch, but I mean my brain just operates on another plane for most people. So I mean I don't fall asleep very quickly, and
I
especially.
feel like Andrew's that meme where the guy's laying there and the wife's like, I bet he's thinking about another woman. Andrew's like, man, I hope that guy didn't get 5 points against me.
Did Jordan Murray score 5 points tonight?
Yeah.
I'm the type that falls asleep immediately, but I wake up at like 4 and then I don't fall asleep again until like 5:30. That's like I could fall asleep, I could say goodnight, and I'm out within 20 seconds. It's amazing, but then until 4:30.
I'm kind of the same way. I'm more toward.
Friday,
I used to be like Andrew, but I guess I just decided to.
Friday night, I took it easy. Like I was like, I want to be fresh for Saturday. So I was like dead tired. So I watched like one TCU drive and I was like, great, Chandler looks like shit. I'm going to bed. Wake up in the middle of the night, check the play-by-play, and I'm like, this is not good at all. What is going on here? And then I see like he leaves the game at some point, and then I check Twitter and it's like, oh great, he like ripped his knee. So absolutely nothing good is here. So I just went back to bed with my tail between my legs and just kind of laid awake for a while thinking about what a failure I am.
So there was a game I remember when it happened. It was Thursday night, Tennessee. Like I was watching 100% for Brew. I said I want him to find the end zone so bad, just so we can have a victory lap, right?
Mm.
And I'll be honest, like he's gonna be involved pretty heavily, I think, this year. Like
what I took away from that game was
like nobody stood out because they blew him out, right? It was like I think Tillman had 4 catches. Like
he had 6 catches on 7 targets, but they seriously rotated guys in.
Yeah.
Like they did it nonstop. Like they let Ramal Keaton was in early. I think it was it Jimmy Holiday? A bunch like Walker Merrill.
Yeah.
Hyatt, obviously. I think it is a true Tillman 1, and then Hyatt and Brew are going to flip-flop receiver 2, 3 in terms of targets. Technically, Brew had 5 targets. I think the Hyatt's 4, but Hyatt got the touchdown.
Right.
Brew had a nice catch along the sideline inside the 10 and like just got pushed out of bounds. Like
he certainly looks the part. Like he looks like next level. Like even
I think that offense is gonna be great. Yeah, I think even Hyatt has a shot at being.
And I'm not here trying to hype up Brew like as much as we've already done that, but like I truly think like the first 2 drives of the game, he was out there, and that's great.
He's a clear starter.
It's great for us.
They gave Walker the old high school try. They were being nice. They wanted to keep him in for another year, locked into Tennessee football.
Right.
We'll know, especially after this Pitt game, because they're going to have to. They're almost a touchdown favorite, which is interesting. Because isn't Pitt ranked in their at Pitt? The rare.
Yeah, they're at Pitt.
I think it's the rare, but it happens. It's funny how that works, but we'll know for sure because they're not going to be able to rotate in guys. Their running back rotation will be interesting. Like, how much is Jabari Small actually going to get? Because they didn't really have to do it. It's kind of like they wanted to kind of fine tune some guys against real competition. And then, they saw things move real well. And then they kind of pumped the brakes to make sure guys weren't hurt. I read a lot of Tennessee stuff for obvious reasons. They're very salty about that Pitt game last year. They want some revenge. So I think that played a part into it as well. But yeah, I'm pretty not thrilled about Brew week 1, but in terms of like all the other stuff,
think we're fine. I think
sure.
he's in a good position to have his weeks where it's his week.
It's difficult for you to have the perspective that I think you should, and you are way ahead of where I think an objective party, if we progressed from February till now and asked that objective party every single month, what do you expect Brew to be doing after? What do you expect your feeling to be about Brew after week 1? You're coming out way ahead right now. It's just difficult to see it because you're living in this moment right now, if that makes sense.
So, were there any other games you guys thought that were kind of eye-catching?
What do you think about Notre Dame's offense? Because I think there's 2 legitimate fantasy options, maybe 3 in DFS terms, And I'm very curious because I kind of had this take. That was really the only game I really watched. Was Notre
Honestly,
Dame
I didn't
Ohio
watch
State.
much of that game.
Did you watch any of that, Andrew?
Just a little. I didn't think Buckner looked really great, but I've also I have a ton of respect for Jim Knowles. I expected Ohio State's defense to be good. It seemed like
I think Notre Dame
Well,
will be
he-
fine. Like
I
Ohio
don't think you can really
State's
judge him.
Ohio State's Ohio State. So
So my thoughts were Mayer's going to get a ton of targets. I think he had like 44% of targets. I don't know if it's going to be that high, but like I think he's going to be just so safe. I think it's going to be a lot of like short, quick passes. But part of me is like, how much of this was they played at Ohio State? If I watched the first half very intently, and it was like they played so scared. It felt like it was almost like they didn't want to lose the game the entire time. And my other takeaway from that would be that Buckner, whatever, like he's going to run a good bit. He doesn't have any options. His receivers are a walk-on white guy, Salermo, who had a sick catch. It was a top 10 play, sick catch. And then he also had a bad pass interference against himself. And then like the other receivers are just like nobodies.
Yeah.
Lindsey's like the poor man Jalen Hyatt, right? Like Lindsey's been the guy that we've talked about at Notre Dame as like a guy that could break through for 3 years.
Yeah.
And he's literally done there's guys with one leg playing receiver for Notre Dame right now, and Lindsey still only can get like 2.
he's Octavius Evans.
It's gross. It's gross. It's like, dude, what are you doing? The
Yeah.
other one. Go ahead.
The one big play to Styles on like the first play of the game or whatever was just like it's not what I guess broken play isn't applicable, but like the defender went for a pick and missed, and that's why it was 50 yards. It was like a 5-yard pass.
It was it wasn't like Styles made some sick play.
Yeah.
I mean, if Styles was that great, they would have thrown it to him more than they did, which they barely did. The other option fantasy wise, I think is interesting. That is probably a guy that we would need to hit on sooner rather than later is this Audric Esteem guy. Chris Tyree is a guy that I've wanted to be a thing for like now 2 years, like Jafar Armstrong, something about Notre Dame running backs.
Yeah.
And he's just not going to happen. He's like fetch. He's just not going to happen. So like, are we jumping aboard Esteem? Because I think Esteem could get some real run. And this is the lowest we're going to see him at price-wise. So do you got, any opinion or thoughts on this Audric Esteem? He's a big dude, I believe.
Yeah, they want to get it seemed like he was every time I looked up, he was the dude getting carries, like in that he was always like I feel like I didn't even see Tyree for all the game I was watching. So with Marshall coming up here, feels nice.
Yeah, this will be a good tell of like how they actually perform. There's a ton of like QB draws and screens and short passes, so we'll see if they actually open it up.
So I kind of want to do a little victory lap here, guys. So Arkansas we're in a tough game against Cincinnati, but Trey Knox. How about Trey Knox?
That was nice.
So like the one guy I called out as tight end. I think when you asked like who's your guy this year,
was there another tight end you talked about this offseason? I can't remember.
Which one? There's a few, but the other ones didn't really.
Any of them out for the season?
Oh yeah, we're not going to go there.
We're not doing that. We'll stick to Trey Knox.
Yeah,
that was a great call. I mean, it makes a lot of sense though, right?
Like, well, he's converted wide receiver to tight end, which is the opposite of Bolt, which Bolt was a tight end converted to wide receiver. But like Trey Knox was their leading receiver, not just because he had 2 touchdowns, but I believe he had like double the amount of catches, 6, I think. So everyone else is 2 or 3. Like if he's their leading usage. Target week in, week out, he's going to be a monster for them.
I mean, no one really wanted to believe in any of their receivers, so it makes sense that someone other than a receiver could be.
He's been there forever, right?
Passing game target.
He was the receiver that like was the big name alongside Burks, and people were like, he might have been like maybe a year before Burks, or maybe
no, they were the same class,
same year.
Yeah,
and people wanted both of them to be a thing, and it was only Burks. Right. And Knox, maybe he beefed up a little bit, and that's why I moved to tight end. Maybe they're just like, we're going to make you a tight end. It's really just a stand-up tight end, like a slot guy. But
Yeah.
The reason why I think it could still be a thing moving forward is that they don't have anything. Like Matt
Right.
Landers and Hazelwood are your 1-2. No, that's not
Right.
really like
Right.
what we saw in week 1 and then obviously in years past. They're flash in the pan types. They're inconsistent. Like doesn't seem like it's going to get any better from those two.
I guess one more game I want to talk about, like Arizona and San Diego State. Arizona looked good. Like they looked really good. I don't know if you guys watched that game, but Arizona looked sharp.
Allen went ham, right?
Like their offense just looked sharp. It didn't look like they just learned how to play football a week ago. And they were like San Diego State. Maybe they're not that great, but like they're normally a good stout defense, and they were just carving them up like it was nothing. So,
did you guys see, off topic but not off topic? Did you see how hot it was at that park at San Diego State's field? They built a stadium. I didn't even realize this because I'm not in that. Like I don't go to games like that or anything. But like, there's like zero shade. And they had this insane heat wave. It was like 100 degrees. And I saw this TikTok video because somebody shared it with me because I don't do TikTok. And it's literally like they show the stadium and there's like 5,000 people in this like 40,000 seat stadium. And then there's like 20,000 people in the concourse. There's like people on stretchers nonstop. They're like begging for water. It's like 20 minutes from Walking Dead, you know, like they're that close to just fighting each other for a bottle of water. So I thought that was great. Entertaining. That's the most I can input from it. But from an offensive standpoint, you know, Arizona, they seem to have a ton of talent. We just don't really know. Like
the freshman,
the guy.
McMillan was good. McMillan he looked the part.
4 and 5 stars.
Yeah, I think he was the number one receiver in the class, right?
If he wasn't, he was up there.
Yeah, he's up there.
I just know that he was.
Delora looked good. I mean, like that team, that might be a fun team to watch this year. Like just moving forward. Let's get out of week 1. Let's go ahead and let's get to week 2. Because we don't want to be here all night. We can talk, like Andrew said, we got 50 hours of content we got to pick from. But going into week 2, the news Sam Hartman is back. That's good news, especially if you drafted him in a best ball and you were thinking it's going to be like a month, 6 weeks that you were not going to.
I thought I was good to go. I didn't have any Hartman. I was checking all my leagues, writing off for dead all the people who wasted early round draft capital for him. I was already counting my win on the under on Wake Forest win total, and here we are.
Right. So how do you think that factors into their receivers' performance? Because like they played VMI week 1. Yeah. Obviously they dominated that game, but no receiver really jumped out as the lead guy. Yeah. So do you think that's just the offense that they've got too many mouths to feed, or do you think somebody clearly separates? Like A.T. Perry was drafted so high that does week 1 tell you anything, or just do you think he's going to get enough as the year goes around to kind of justify his draft position?
I think Perry and Hartman have that mind meld, like the AOC Charlie Jones kind of thing. Like they don't, whatever the play call doesn't even matter because they both know where he's going to get open and it's just get throw it there.
Yeah.
So I think that we saw that as the season progressed last year. Every indication this offseason was that's here to stay. That's why Perry was going so high in drafts, and we're probably going to see that again now that Hartman is back in the fold.
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried one bit if you have Perry. I think this is good. You know, I think Griffiths played a really well game.
Did he look good? Did you watch?
I didn't really watch, but stat wise looks great. I have one of my buddies said he was bad, but I don't know. Maybe he missed Perry on a couple. You know, that's the thing though, right? Like he could have missed Perry on a couple long targets. It just felt like he never got Perry involved early.
But like you got to realize, like he wasn't named the starter till like what, a week and a half ago. He had no reason to think he was going to play.
Yeah, well, that's more justification as to why Perry wasn't amazing, rather than like Griffiths being Griffiths. Like he had 288 and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
But I think Hartman's going to be better obviously better on the ground. He's going to score on the ground, and I think he's going to locate Perry. I think,
Yeah.
like Andrew said, there's that mold meld of like, I know what this guy's going to do. I've been here forever with him. It just is. I love every second of it. I have Prize Picks overs on Hartman, so I'm definitely happy that those aren't dead in the water, especially with Rodriguez from Kentucky being suspended multiples. I got a lot of those together, but like, it's very interesting that they made this big thing about it, and maybe it was us making a big thing about it. But he misses one game. Is there any chance? I mean, he's 100%, right? Like,
I would think
rumor
so.
is blood clots.
Right.
He's not playing if there's any harm to him. He's got to be full strength, 100% ready to go.
I don't think they're putting him out there. If they made it such a big deal that he wasn't going to play, that it could be multiple weeks, like I don't think they're going to put him out there unless he's ready to go.
Cool.
But
yeah,
you know,
I think the same thing.
Did you have any lineups or any picks on Underdog?
I feel like the move is just to find different ways to correlate and game stack the Louisville UCF game, right? So they've got, and they reformatted their pick 'em where I think it.
Well,
it's
before
nice.
you get into that, pick 'em is the easiest way to get some action on Underdog. Just pick your over-under on your favorite player stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple. Their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em slip. Get every pick right and take home some cold hard cash. Use the code BTR to get your first deposit doubled up to $100 by Underdog. So, Andrew, Louisville UCF.
They reformatted pick'em where now, I don't know, it relative to last week, I think it's a little cleaner in some ways where you've got the player name, everything's sorted by game kind of from high to low, and then within that game you've got each individual player, but underneath that player you've got all their different selections that you can make, and then by variable what platform you're on, that's far from a given. Like DraftKings sorts everything where there's the rushing props, and then on a different screen there's the receiving, and then the rushing TDs. But for instance, Malik Cunningham this week, it's like, okay, it's Malik Cunningham, and then right underneath his name you could bet if he scores or you can select if he scores a rushing touchdown, if you think he's going to get more or less yards, passing, rushing, etc. But I mean, yeah, I think just all of the different selections I've seen on Underdog, different platforms, it seems like there's on the Louisville side for sure, there's opportunity to just kind of go over, correlate, and think that if this game reasonably shoots out, a lot of different things can hit. Like the lines for the different key players, they don't necessarily seem super inflated at all. Like checking the box for a Malik Cunningham rushing touchdown, I think makes a lot of sense. I'm one of the few selections I did for actual player level season long was taking his under actually for rushing touchdowns which on DraftKings initially was 17 and a half.
I was gonna say, wasn't it like 18 or something like that?
Yeah, insane number. But anyway, I think they make an active effort to run him a little more this week. But Tion Evans, his selection on Underdog for rushing yards, I think it's 70 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's the man. He's like, as we saw, like I think we talked about it, how this was what was going to happen, how he was RB1 and he was they were going to ride with him. He just kind of scouting the stat line. It seemed like he was the only guy who really showed out last week. They're probably going to just continue to feed him. So I'm cool riding with him this week. Going with Cunningham to score, and then kind of just messing around from there with some different things, but kind of using that as a core and playing around. And then
do you think his game is better than his first one against Syracuse? Because
God, I hope so.
That was a rough outing.
Malik?
Yeah, gotta be right.
Yeah, it's gotta be better. I mean,
because if it's not, there's panic that's setting in for a lot of people.
I think that it's. I don't want to say that he's going to totally bust this year because I don't have any real reason to predict that meaningfully. But it wouldn't.
Regression isn't crazy to think.
I mean, when you think about it, right? Like he scored a ton of rushing touchdowns.
Yeah,
is a limited but good passer, and he doesn't have a ton of talent around him to help him. So like
Yeah.
regression is not the craziest thing to project. When
They
it comes,
said this offseason that they wanted to run him less, and then they brought in all these running backs, stacked their running back room. And obviously it's different once you have an outcome like last week to maybe they just revert back to Malik do everything kind of deal.
And losing Harold doesn't help either.
Harrell and his goose egg from week 1. But yeah.
We're not
yeah,
talking about that. Get out of here.
That's my that's kind of where my head's at though.
yeah, I liked your underdog picks though. I think I was looking at it earlier, and I had 5 that I kind of, well, 4 that I really kind of looked at and essentially picked. One of them was Malik rush touchdowns over. I like Bowser over 68.5 rushing yards. I like the over with JRP in terms of total yards of 295 and a half. Like I think with JRP, you know, like I think he throws for 225. Like that's not a crazy number. They're gonna run, man. They're gonna go fast.
That game's gonna be wild. It's gonna be so much fun.
That game in theory should be really sweet.
295 and a half seems low. Total yards
225, and you tell me he can't rush for 70. Like,
yeah, he's going.
I think in a full game of where he's really used, that's like it's not the best. I don't think we have like the best EV in it. I don't think we have the best like edge on it. But like if I'm picking something, that's a great one. I actually they have Texas Bama up because it's such a big game already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I kind of like Jordan Whittington under 45 and a half receiving
I saw,
yards.
dude, that caught my eye as well. I haven't looked at the Texas box score from week 1. Did he show out or like I don't understand why they're putting that up.
I don't know.
I didn't
He
watch
just.
him.
I mean, I get it. I know
he
that
did not have a big game. Like
Yeah.
I can pull it up real quick. I remember looking at it earlier. He had 4 targets and 26 yards. This is really a question of like, does Quinn Ewers do better? I mean, his underdog is 205 for passing yards.
207 and a half.
207. So, I mean, that is tough, man. Like he's getting a quarter of the yards, but he's not going to get a quarter of the targets. So that's tough. I mean, and by the way, I think they just took off Isaiah Bowser off the board.
Yeah.
Like literally, I just tried betting it, and they're like, no.
Big Brother is watching.
So I wonder, did he just get hurt or something?
Yeah.
Is it that time of the month?
I don't know. Maybe just random stuff happened.
Okay.
But yeah,
so,
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think a lot of good options, a lot of competitive options. I think if you really if you're a Burton fan, you're not going to get a 78.5 receiving yards. That's not going to be lower than that. You know, that's a big one. I think Bijan Robinson, 72.5 rushing yards. You know, I think that's a nice over. We saw Lou Nichols play a superior team and do really, really well. And then, you know, Addison, same thing. Jordan Addison, 83.5 receiving yards. Not one I would bet, but like if you're trying to diversify a little bit, like I think that's a number that's going to be lower than it'll be in majority of weeks, which is something to be said.
I think Caleb Williams, 32 and a half rushing yards seems low also.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. It just depends really. Like, I don't think you have to worry about like sacks with Stanford. I think you have to worry about like competitiveness. Like, is this game going to be close enough where they feel like they have to run?
Right.
Like they're going to say, "Hey, Caleb, like get the extra yards. If you can get an extra 4 yards, get it." Like, and I think that's what you would have to worry about if that's not a competitive game.
All right, so let's move away from underdog real quick, and is there any games in week 2 that you're looking ahead towards?
What's the games that excite you? I was going to ask that question to like try and actually look like I'm adding value.
Okay. I'll just act like I didn't ask it. Andrew, would you like to ask the question?
What's your guys' games of the week this week?
I think most fun game, Houston, Texas Tech is going to be elite.
Yeah.
I think.
I like Old Dominion, East Carolina.
You love you some ECU.
I do.
And so I think that could be a fun game. UVA, Illinois baffles me in terms of like betting wise. Like I can't understand how UVA is an underdog. But I think that'll be an interesting game.
Anything could happen in that game. It could be gross.
I have a lot of faith in UVA's offense.
Yeah.
I could see them losing. I could only see them losing like 35-31. Like unless we get some weird stuff at the end.
Baylor BYU looks pretty sexy too.
Should be a fun one as well.
But Andrew, you obviously have some games that you want to
You're
talk
leading
about.
us.
Yeah.
You're leading us.
I don't want to say one of your games.
I got my eye on Salter and Liberty against UAB, but also Arizona State, Oklahoma State's my favorite game of the week. I'll having a huge bet on Arizona State win total under. Like, this is like Oklahoma State, just don't give up fucking like 50 points to Emory Jones. I have total faith in Spencer Sanders in the offense showing out, but that defense scares me. But I think it's going to be an awesome atmosphere in Stillwater. I think it's going to be fun. I'm glad it's at night, and I'm looking forward to a bludgeoning being handed down by the Pokes.
Yeah, I got a question.
Do you think Oklahoma State's defense is scary? Is that what you said?
Scary bad.
Yeah.
Oh, scary bad. Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So I have a question.
I was going to say, because you want them to lose. So I got them being Arizona State.
Chris, this is kind of directed to you, but if San Jose State beats Auburn this week, is Harsin on a flight back to Boise next week?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think if
you don't think they would fire him if they lost to San Jose State?
Dude, they're too invested money-wise. They've already wasted a year, so why fire him now? You know, you don't do that after one. I mean, San Jose State would be a bad loss, but I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, they played multiple quarterbacks early, by the way. Did you guys see that? They played Robbie Ashford like within the first quarter.
Did they?
Yeah, and he looked pretty decent apparently. I mean, it's Mercer, but like Finley looked decent. Ashford looked decent, but I think Ashford obviously was more of a true runner with some decent passing, and then Finley was better passing, but like still made some mistakes.
All right, Andrew.
So Jarquez Hunter looked good too, apparently, but I mean, both him and Tank had some good numbers, but I don't know.
Andrew, what's your other games? You had 3, right?
I did. Games? Yeah, but I forgot what a couple of them were.
Does Wake Forest Vandy end 45-41?
That was one of them. Yeah, before Hartman, Wake Forest Vandy I thought was fun. Now it's even more fun.
Right. I think a lot of people were picking Vandy to win that game, but now, do you think Vandy was winning that game before Hartman?
No.
No.
They beat Elon by like 12.
12?
Right?
I thought it was more than that. I thought it
was like 42-30, right?
Was
something
it?
Like that?
Oh, maybe it was.
Wasn't great.
Maybe it was they're blowing them out and they gave them scores at the end. Anyway, doesn't matter. So Wake Forest, Vandy. What was your other one? Was it Mississippi State, Arizona?
I don't remember.
The 10 p.m. Fox Sports one.
But I do no, it's not 10
11.
p.m. God's time.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I have to.
Yeah,
disclaimer.
Exactly. I appreciate the 11 p.m. kick.
Yeah.
Like, because someone actually went out of their way to say, you know what, 10 p.m. is the standard, but we're bumping it to 11. So you got to always appreciate that. I don't remember what my other.
I like Oregon State Fresno's nice at 10:30.
That's
CBS
nice.
Sports. So there was another one that I wanted to, like USC Stanford. We kind of talked about it. Florida, Kentucky. Like, that's a Florida runaway now, right? Like, is that how we feel? Or do we think Kentucky makes that a game?
No. Is Kentucky favored? Or am I making that up?
Florida's favored by a touchdown.
Oh, okay. My mistake. No, I think it'll be a good game.
Can we acknowledge the fact that ACC Network is a garbage network? And the reason why their deal is so bad is because they have to throw Virginia Tech against Boston College at 8 p.m. as their primetime game. Like, that's their best option this weekend, and it's proof as to why it's worth like $5 million a year for the conference.
I have another question. Why is Iowa favored by 3.5 against Iowa State?
I was just gonna say, is there a grosser game than Iowa State? Like,
but Iowa's favored. Like, do they think Iowa State's that bad? Because Iowa looked pretty bad.
Dude,
Week 1.
have you ever seen what happens in this game?
No, I know it gets wild. I get it,
Yeah,
but that just seems like a
I
pretty
think
crazy line.
that's fair. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
So I'm
Um,
looking at speaking of gross, let's do this. I'm looking at the StubHub tickets as low as number
Okay.
on the schedule for the week. There are what is the I mean, this one's so obnoxious. I doubt it, but like what would be your guess as to one of the lowest dollars to get in the game would be?
How did you filter? What'd you do? Did you just filter this by college football? Can you do that?
I just went to
ESPN, right?
ESPN CFB, and the schedule gives you tickets.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
says tickets as low as
$2.
$3 is the lowest. That's Alcorn State against Tulane.
Ole Miss is
The next
$5.
one is the next one. The lowest one's $4. And someone said it would be a great game to watch this weekend.
East Carolina, Old Dominion. Let's go. Booking my tickets
Okay.
now.
Yeah, flying out there. The next closest one that's like of a real game is Duke Northwestern.
Ole
That
Miss
is
Central
just
Arkansas
awful.
is $5. I could drive down to Oxford for $5. Cost me more in gas to get to Oxford than it would be to get into the game.
Like to get in the game, get a beer
Right.
and parking.
Right. I can come back with less than $100. That'd be right.
Hey, what do you guys think is going to happen in Bama, Texas? What's the most realistic possibility of what happens here? They're 20-point favorites or something
I
like
would
that.
say 42-10 is the score.
So Texas rolls. What about you, Andrew?
Right. Right.
No, I'll give Texas a couple more field goals, but let's say 51-16.
I really, really want this one to be closer, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
Boycott big noon kickoff. We shouldn't be having the best games of the day at fucking noon. It's bullshit.
So-
Who is watching that shit? Who is
People without kids.
I mean, I guess that's the answer, but yeah, let's go ahead and exclude such a representative portion of our population.
So, like, seriously though,
So that journalists can go home early or some
Like-
shit. Like,
for them to be close in this game, Ewers has to play out of his mind, right?
he needs to just
Yeah.
play like people expect Quinn or
Well, yeah, he's got to play to the lofty expectations that people have
Yeah.
for him. But even then, like, is that going to beat Alabama? I don't know that it does.
No, it doesn't.
Like,
I mean, you losing Nair is so like their wide receiver 2 now is replacement level at best.
right,
At least when they had Nair, like okay, Worthy and Nair, like let's go.
Right.
And then you've got some talent at tight end as well. Now, like I think when the depth chart came out and everyone was like, "Who the f is that guy? Is that guy's name Casey Kane? Like who the f is that guy?" And Whittington's what he's got at most another week or two before his yearly season-ending injury. Right there. What if something happens to Worthy? That dude's a twig, right?
Yeah.
And like it's a matter of time before one of his 20 targets leads to him being sidelined. Like they are in not great shape, and they are from a skill position perspective. Obviously, having Bijan is nice, but I don't know if to actually compete with Bama, it's like Ewers playing up to his talent level is one thing, but there's a zillion other things that are going against him as well.
all right. So, unless Chris, you got something to say on that game, or no?
I was just going to say the only way this one stays close is if we get a Heisman performance out
Right.
of Bijan. I think,
Yeah, on the Texas
I
side,
mean-
somebody's got to play out of their mind.
yeah, I think Bama's got a ton of offensive options, a lot of room for error. And like you guys were saying, Texas is it's a it's like three-man basketball, right? It's yours, it's Bijan, and it's Worthy. If you're lucky, Jatavion Sanders is like a real dude and can like keep it going. But
Yeah.
I mean, the three of them would have to go for like 300 passing yards, $180 on the ground, and Worthy would have to have $180. And even then, I would say it's like 42-35. I mean, you'd have to go straight chaos of Alabama, Auburn from a few years back where Auburn won on like a 100-yard interception return for touchdown. I think they had like either a kickoff return for a touchdown or something close to it. Like you have to have the crazy iconic game, which is not what you want to rely on.
Right.
So before we go, I wanted to kind of address a couple questions that were in Discord. Clint asks, Devin Neal only had 5 touches. Is that cause for concern, or because of his output on those 4 touches, not concern at all? Well, he went 4 carries, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns in week 1.
Can I take this one?
Yeah, go for it.
So there was, I feel like the talk going into that game was that this was going to be a committee situation with Neal leading it, and all of his touches, I believe, came in the first half. They absolutely obliterated that FCS team over once they played. And
no, he had 2 touches in the first half, 2 in the second.
Oh, my mistake.
And he actually had 87.
There's too many of them to count.
87 of his 108 yards in the second half.
Yeah.
We got a touchdown in both halves, but go on.
Where I was going with that misguided conclusion was that I think that it's largely business as usual relative to what the expectation was going into the year, right? They're going to split touches amongst their running backs, probably going to cycle through possession, stuff like that ilk. Obviously, I think we hoped that he would be the dude for much of the offseason, but just as fall camp progressed, it felt like that probably wasn't going to be the case. So it's not. I don't think that like the cause for concern is that he's got to fight to get touches and like have a role, but he's if your concern is he going to be the RB1 on Kansas, then yeah, there's concern there.
Yeah, I would say you guys wanted him to be RB1. I have like literally 0 Devin Neal because Kansas is just not going to score enough points over the year. But I think you're right. Like I think there's 2 parts of it. I listened to the game, unfortunately, and they had made mention that it was, and I said to myself, like, if I only knew this, I would have never played Devin Neal in DFS lineups. And then he has this crazy game. Like this is back when he had like 4 carries for 70 yards or something, like 4 carries for 40 yards or something. I was like so mad at myself. But they said that they wanted to use 4 guys. Like in that game specifically, they wanted to use all 4 guys. I think one of them easily drops off. So your worst case is looking at a 3-man group. Maybe they turn it into a 2-man group. I don't know if Kansas scores enough to make even a 2-man split conversation happen, right? Like Devin Neal is valuable if he gets 55% of carries on an average to bad Kansas team. If he hits the 40% mark, he'd have to be crazy TD efficient to be valuable. So I would be very concerned.
All right, so the last 2 questions. So CFF Jared, is your start sit thought process different when you're deciding between 2 of your studs versus if you're deciding between 2 deeper players?
I mean, I think if you're a stud, you're a stud, right? Like I think this comes up with somebody saying Bijan, do you play him? Like, yeah, you play him. Like, is Bijan like? Are you not playing a dude that you pick top 5? Like, is he really that good if he's top 5 pick? Like, Lou Nichols proved. You know, this is college football. Like,
well, I just think
if you're in a bad matchup, you go to the same guy that's a superstar every time, or your superstar makes enough plays on enough carries or catches or passes, right? Like, I wouldn't. If you pick a guy in the first round, you don't bench him.
Okay,
ever.
So you're telling me? Let me ask you honestly. You would rather, if you had a choice between Bijan and Tajay Spears, you'd play Bijan this week?
Yeah.
Over Spears?
Don't pick Bijan if you don't want to play him over Tajay Spears.
This early in the season, I think I lean with Chris's sentiment.
I mean, it's fair. I don't disagree. I was throwing out.
It may
an
change
example
throughout the weeks. You know, it may change by week 8. You know, because you get more data to say Bijan did that, Bijan did this, and Tajay did this. Tajay, but like it's week 2. You play the guy you picked top 5. Like Bama is not like 2006 Bama or 2008 or 9 Bama defense, right? Where they were insane. It's a different ball game. They give up points.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just playing devil's advocate.
That's fair. But you went with your boy Tajay Spears,
I did.
So that's why
you noticed. You noticed I picked a guy I liked. I didn't pick George Halani. But anyway, that's all we got for this week, guys. We'll be back next week. We try to do this every week. recap and move forward. But keep an eye out on Twitter for our games of the week. I know Andrew mentioned all of his. We'll post all of ours this week. Also, join the Discord, like, subscribe, everything you know you're supposed to do with the YouTube video. Follow us, BTR Pod. That's it. Zach, Andrew, Chris. We'll be back next week. So thanks, guys.